Right, welcome everybody to the second in a series of webinars called Communication in a Crisis. My name is Jessica Shells and I run the Ideal Marketing Company. We're a full service marketing company based in Market Harbour, although obviously we're not there at the moment. We're all in our own homes. And this week I've got a special treat because Julie Futcher will be joining us. She's a sales expert that runs training and provides a whole host of services, which we'll talk about in a moment. The first in the series was really concentrating on how businesses can respond with their marketing during this COVID-19 crisis. The rest of the series will continue to touch on how we continue to respond, but also go into some fundamental marketing techniques and sales techniques. We'll get experts in week to week. It's very important that in order to make the series as relevant as possible to you, that you fill out the poll that is at the bottom. That's how you have your say in what happens moving forward. Let us know about your business and we can tailor things. So as I said, this is week 2 of Communicating a Crisis and Beyond. We don't just want to focus completely on COVID-19. There is an opportunity for a lot of you to spend time on your fundamental marketing activities, things that maybe you want to do for a really long time and which will help for you to recover more quickly as well. Week 2, our focus really is on knowing your market, or something that I normally go on about, creating personas, but really we are getting to know who your market are and your customers. The reason why this is particularly helpful at the moment during this crisis is because last week one of the main messages was continue to communicate, because those that don't will suffer for a lot longer after the pandemic is over. But 2, you are probably going to have to change your message from being very promotional to being maybe more about brand building and developing your brand. The best way to do that without kind of feeling guilty about marketing or coming across as opportunist or taking advantage is really thinking about the value or just sounding like everybody else, is to think about the value that you already provide to your customers, what it is that they come to you for, and to provide that in a different way. A real example of that would be a beauty salon, where you would think that's very much about going in, seeing the people. You know, it's a very physical, one-on-one kind of experience. But there's loads of things that happen in the background, like you know, the sense of community, feeling pampered, feeling cared about. Is that kind of treat? There's luxury there. So there are different things there are different ways to maybe deliver that, considering the restriction that we now have on communication. Now, for some people, they maybe haven't gone through that process and gone through the thoughts around what that value is. Personas and the activities that we're going to go through today helps you to understand what you do provide, because often it's not actually what you might think it is. It could be something else. So these activities are helpful. They also touch on activities that are normally in our paid programs and in other areas, so you're getting a real bonus here as well. So introductions and poll. I have already told you who I am, but I'm going to introduce you to Julie in a moment. I hope you're still filling out the poll if you haven't already. I expect to see 100%. The structure and timings, we have up until 12 today, but we're really going to see how it goes. Generally, we've got between half an hour and 40 minutes where we'll talk through a bit of a persona, talk through the different areas and activities, and then move on to Q&A. The first bit is really talking about what personas or avatars are. I know Julie has a different way of referring to it, so we'll talk about that a little bit. What might be included, there's loads of templates out there, so what I find to be really, really helpful and why, but there are other things that are often included. How it applies to marketing, how it applies to sales, and then how it applies to the crisis. I'm not leading with the crisis because it's a lot easier to understand once you understand how it applies to marketing and sales first. And then there are questions as well, because the Q&A section, this will be recorded for our purposes, but it will not go live on YouTube afterwards, so that you feel confident that you can ask questions in privacy and be quite open. But also, I think that if you really want to benefit from a Q&A, then you should be here on the live call. And then resources. Those will be circulated afterwards. Everybody who's registered for this event will get an email with the link to YouTube video, but the video will be up on YouTube afterwards anyway. If there is anything else that we've promised, it will be included in that email via Eventbrite. series coming up. This will be at 11 o'clock every Wednesday. If you want to have an influence over what might be included, please do give me feedback on what you'd love to hear. The next one I'm planning to do will actually be on email marketing. Also, if there's anybody that you think would make a great guest, then please do also let me know. So I'd like to introduce Julie Futcher. Hello, Julie.
Hi, hello everybody.
So you can see the list of things that Julie does. The reason why I've asked her to be involved today is because even though sales and marketing go hand in hand, they are specialist disciplines, as I've learned in the last 2 years when I've needed to be more involved with sales. And I've attended Julie's workshops, which have been really, really helpful and have changed the way that we've been able to do sales. So I really highly recommend working with Julie. I know loads of people who really who rate her very highly. I hope that's fair to say. Julie, do you want to add anything that you think is not missing here?
No, I think you've done a really good job of bigging me up there. So I only hope I live up to the bigging up that you've done for me.
Okay. Well, the reason why in our conversations we've both talked about personas, and there is a big overlap, as you will see. It's the reason why I thought Julie would be the perfect person to join me today. And the next thing that we're going to move on to is, what is a persona? So sometimes people call it an avatar. Julie, I think you just refer to it as knowing your target market.
Yeah, I know target market, yeah.
And really that's the point, you know, whether you call it persona or not, the point of the exercise is to really understand who it is that you are talking to, so that you can speak to them better. Normally what's included in a persona when we do it is what's happening in their life, what's happening in their head, and where they are, and the reasons for that will in a broad sense, and the reason for that will become quite apparent. The reason why personas are really important for us is because otherwise we often find that people are going to get copy and paste marketing techniques that are just like, well, examples like, well, we need to have a Twitter account. And that won't necessarily be based on understanding their customers. Their market might, or the messaging that they send out might actually not be as relevant as they'd like. Maybe the conversion rate won't be as good if people don't understand exactly who they're talking to and what matters to them. So that's the reason why we do it. What's happening in their life helps us to understand any trigger events that might make somebody want to, or like a point at which someone might be interested in engaging with you. What's happening in their head helps you to improve the messaging, and where they are helps you to decide what campaigns you're going to use, whether you're going to pick LinkedIn or whether it's going to be a telemarketing campaign, whether it's going to be a new website, and it helps you to really decide where the messaging that will be a lot better will go. So those are in broad strokes. Have you got anything to add to that, Julie? You think anything's missing? Oh, you've muted.
Am I unmuted now?
You're unmuted now, but I think I muted you and unmuted you 3 times.
No, I'm muted myself because I was pouring out a cheeky cup of coffee and I didn't want people to hear gurgling. No, I think everything that you spoke about there is really important, because from a sales point of view, if you know what's happening in your life, what's happening in the head and where they are, you're going to get a real good understanding of the pain points, which is really important for the sales process. So the more you dig into this and the more you actually really look at this, the better your sales process will be and the easier your sales process will be.
Excellent. Okay. So let's move on to the next slide. This is an example layout for a persona, and I'll talk through each step. And I think, Julie, if you've got any points to make along the line, please do just interject. So the title, to make it clear, you would do one of these per persona, and you might, for your company, you might have 4, you might have 10. For some companies there might be 20, but they're normally very large companies. And it can sometimes feel a bit rough and ready when you're first getting into it. You can kind of be thinking, oh, well, I don't really know where to start. Just start with the first person that comes to mind. For some people, the exercise can be helped by thinking about your ideal customer, like just thinking about one of your clients and how you would explain them. There will also be forks in the road, so that will become apparent as we go on. The title is something actually, funnily enough, you can put right at the very end. It's kind of like an executive summary. When you've done the assignment, actually the title will become apparent, so don't worry about it too much. I've put a B2B and B2C, you pick one of those, business to business or business to consumer. This will heavily affect which of the stuff on the right hand, in the box on the right hand side is going to be relevant, because not everything that's there is. You don't have to use it all. The first two items at the top on the left are actually more about you than it is about them. It's what you want for them to do. So desirable behaviour might be to buy something from you. Odds are probably. It could be to become a brand advocate. It could be to buy more frequently. It could be to bring along friends and family. Undesirable behaviour is not always necessary to fill out, but it could be. And it's more about, these are more about self-awareness. What do you specifically want for them to do? The reason why these things are really helpful is because then they come into your marketing measurement. And marketing measurement is something that we're going to come to in a future episode in the series. So this can be a helpful thing to start with, but these two things are really about you and what you want for them to do rather than about them. The rest, all about them. So why are they looking for you? Was there an inciting incident? There might not have been, but something could have happened. It could have been, if we go back to the beauty salon example, because it's something that is easy enough for us to understand, I think, as a concept. It could be that they've honestly seen their friend's nails, or they've got a party coming up, or a wedding or something like that, and they've either had a recommendation from a friend that they go to you, or you know, they've done a Google. So there's something that's happened. They've been invited to a wedding, or they've seen somebody's eyebrows and they're jealous because they look really, what's the term, on fleek. Goes to show that I'm not cool. So probably the fact that I'm using the word cool probably means I'm not cool. So there might be something that you can use there, because that will also pull into their key drivers and motivation. So their key drivers and motivation, what they're really looking to achieve in the end, is often about how they want to feel, what's the deliverable, what really matters to them. So for example, if somebody is going to a wedding, they want to look really good at the wedding. They want to feel confident. Maybe they haven't been for a while. They particularly want to look good if they bump into their ex, for example. So that might be particularly important. The pain points and concerns, Julie, you touched on this.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I think just to sort of to put a spin on this that you're going through now is so important, because I see a lot of people that come to me and we talk about sales, and I say, who is your target market? And they say everybody, and it's not. So this is why this exercise is absolutely key. Mm-hmm. Sales predominantly is if you can understand someone's pain points, their needs, their wants, their issues, their problems, and you provide a solution to that. So I actually don't like the word sales. I like problem resolution. So if you can really go into detail and understand and put your head in their shoes about the pain points and the concerns and their needs, etc., this really starts helping you with your sales messages, and actually when you start talking to your prospective customers about how you can resolve their problems, it gets your head into that mode to start off with. So this for me is when we're talking to clients, particularly on sales consultancy or when we're doing telemarketing campaigns, we really dig into this and really dig into this. And also I will say to you, what this will come out with is your next box down is, why would they use you over the competition? You can start really also to come out with your USP.
Yeah, and that's really, I suppose, for that's the way of putting it, is that's what you want, is your USP if there is one.
Yeah.
So pain points and concerns, I think examples of that would be, are they concerned that this is going to be far more expensive? Sometimes a pain point of concern, well, a lot of the time it is about the investment required. Sometimes it can be about the commitment. Sometimes it can be about quality, and you know, if there's any risk involved. So it's knowing that up front, because that's where your objections are going to come in, isn't it?
Can I also interject at that point?
Mm-hmm.
This is also about what drives them to buy your particular service. So I think you touched on that a little bit with regard to the beauty. You know, then someone's needs would be want to be look absolutely drop dead gorgeous when they meet their ex at the wedding. You know, this is also something that we need to think about. I think where pricing is concerned, and what I would say to you is, you know, people do have concerns about budgets, but my view on this with sales is if you are really telling people how to resolve their needs, wants, issues and problems, they see a value. And then sort of concerns about pricing can be moved to the side. So again, you know, this is why this part of this exercise is so key. It is really about understanding what drives people to come to you or to use your type of service.
So from a sales perspective, would it be fair to say that by understanding and really tapping into what the value is, that you move the conversation away from being a price-based one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's about value. It's about giving somebody a good reason why they should buy your product or your service. And if you understand their particular pain points and what somebody in your customer's shoes would actually want, you can have those conversations rather than it's just the price. So
which I think is going to be important for it is always important for businesses, but it's going to be even more important. The key drivers of motivation, let me just make sure that we've done everything, talked about everything. So why would they use you over the competition? What you're doing there, this may come up in your pain points and concerns anyway, but it just gives you a real opportunity to see whether you are different and to state that. Now, validations, which is testimonials, reviews, influencers, case studies, this is all evidence that you can be trusted, because the fact is you can say, you can create the right messaging and you can write it well, but somebody then needs to be able to trust that you can be trusted to do what you say. And not many people will just take your word for it. So a strong brand will make a difference, but a strong brand is normally built by evidence in the form of testimonials, reviews, influencers, case studies. Video testimonials can be a lot more powerful than just written ones. For example, if they're through websites where testimonials are verified, for example, that will matter more than what you put on your own website. When you can write anything, you can make up the testimonials if you want. So this is real evidence that help. Awards would be it as well. Any other examples spring to mind, Julie?
There's validations. For me, well, for me, it's so key. I mean, I'm in a service-driven industry sector, so you know you can't touch and feel. Well, that sounds a bit rude. Sorry. I was going to say you can't touch and feel me. It depends.
Can't touch and feel anybody.
That's what you look like, really. As opposed to me, sort of for a mug, for example, you can see that, whereas the service I provide isn't. I think more and more we're in a world where people will check on what other people will say. So this is an absolute key part of your sales process as well as your marketing process. You know, I've taken a lot of time on LinkedIn to make sure that I've got reviews and recommendations on that, and I win business off the back of those on my LinkedIn profile. So it is absolutely key. And
it makes so the message that I always share from a marketing perspective is that when somebody gets to the salesperson, it's an awful lot easier if the marketing has pre-qualified. This is the sort of thing that helps to pre-qualify and gets somebody so much further or closer to the finish line, so that your sales process is a lot easier.
Yeah, I agree.
These are the things that for us in websites in particular, for example, will be quite important towards the end, because they might have read your message and gone, yeah, okay, well, that's fair enough. But then really it's any lingering doubt that somebody might have. The validations can really help to pull people over the finish line where they do decide that yours is the thing to purchase of all of the options. So all of this, all of the things that are going on in their head will then help, once you've written those out, it will help you to write the key messages. And this does not need to be war and peace. It does not need to be perfect. It can be rewritten by a copywriter. This is really taking everything into consideration, what are the key messages that you need to make sure that you get across to your customers in your marketing, and probably in any sales conversations as well, I imagine, Julie.
Yeah, but I think whereas marketing, you will have prepared some key messages and you'll be using those to market out. In sales, my mindset is just be very wary of having set things to actually get across, because in sales it is all about tailoring what you're doing to that particular person's needs, wants, issues and problems. That's why I go back to the pain points and concerns. If you've done your homework there and really dug into that, your message will be, although probably if you stripped it out, very similar, but you've got to just be careful on a prepared statement every single time.
Not a script kind of.
Not a script, no, it needs to be tailored for that particular person.
Excellent. Well then, I think with sales it is very much about listening anyway, isn't it? I think with marketing you don't get the opportunity. But I think if you've got an idea, then you've maybe got a question prepared. I think there was kind of a classic time years ago. I didn't have a television where I was living, and I got a phone from Sky Broadband, because I use Sky Broadband, and they asked me why it was that I wasn't using Sky for my TV package, and I said I didn't have a television, and the line just went dead, and it like silence, like you could kind of hear him thumbing through the script, and that was the problem. There was no answer to I don't have a television. Right. So then, on the right-hand side, this is where targeting comes in, and I'm not so sure how you would feel about this size, Julie. So not everything here is definitely relevant for you. You just, if it's not, leave it. Don't get tripped up by it. I've seen that quite a few times. So if the age of your customer is relevant, then write that down, or your potential client. If it's B2C, this is far more like business to consumer. This is far more likely to be relevant. The stuff at the very top on the right-hand side: age, gender, education, location, and then how best to reach them might come out of that anyway, or hobbies. That's really more often likely to be a B2C persona. Whereas underneath it, I've got some professional stuff, which is obviously the business to business. This is the company size and details, industry, the position of the person that you want to talk to, their years of experience, seniority, responsibilities, and decision makers. What sometimes comes up at this point is that, for example, when you look at decision maker, you might think, well, no, they're not actually. So the person that I normally deal with has this job title, but I also kind of need to do some secondary marketing to the decision maker, who I might not actually get an opportunity to get in front of, but I need to help them to get across the message of that person to that person who may have different concerns. So they become another persona who you still need to pay attention to. What we often find is, say, for example, we have 6 personas that we're building, then 2 of them could be the person who's normally your touch point, but then there might be another 2 that the actual decision makers that you have to help to communicate to. Another one might be as well referral partners, for example. So actually they're not your customer, they are people who can help you to get in contact with your customer. And these are really important people to cultivate relationships with. For example, for a lot of business to business, if you're in professional services in any way, then accountants are a brilliant referral partner for a lot of businesses, because they are trusted, they have long relationships, they have established relationships, and they're in a position to know what's going on for most companies. So they can be a really good referral. That's an example of the person that comes to mind. You got anything on the targeting, Julie, on the stuff on the right hand side?
I just want to pick up on decision makers. I think you've got a very, very valid point in understanding. I like to call it the buying process of a company.
Right, yeah.
So sitting with somebody and said, "Oh, you're the decision maker," is quite a funny phrase. But what is your buying process? Is a lovely question to ask, because then you really get a handle on how a company makes up and who is it that makes the decisions. So when I was making a decision about target market for my business, I target owner managed businesses, because then they're the decision maker. they're the ones that are going to make the ultimate decision, and they're the ones we tend to work with.
Yeah.
But yeah, understanding your buying process, it also actually will map out as well. It'll be an evolution in your business, because you might think one thing, but you review this 3 months down the line, you might find that there are other people within organizations of the companies that you're targeting, or the type of companies you're targeting, that you hadn't actually thought of.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of probably what I'd like to add to that.
Okay, and it can just make the process a lot smoother, I
Yeah.
think a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and less surprises in the sales process, but from a marketing point of view, your messaging, you're tailoring your messaging to the relevant person.
Yeah. So if I just come up to the because I want to make sure that I don't miss anything on the top right, where we're talking about more the business to consumer, age, gender, education and hobbies. The reason why these are there is, for example, if I know that our customer group normally likes yoga, for example, then that's something that I can use in Facebook campaigns. That can be used for targeting. If I know that they are often also might be interested in another brand, they're more likely to be doing certain things with their lifestyle, then that opens up in particularly digital marketing techniques that otherwise might be closed. If I know that they're dog walkers, or you know, there's all sorts of things that we can use. It's sometimes quite interesting when you then have a look at the data that's behind where your customers are coming from, because often going through this process, it will raise questions that you then have to go and answer. And the next thing we're going to talk about is where this information comes from. But don't be afraid of that, because this gives you an opportunity to go and ask that questions, which might be in your data anyway. It might be stuff that you can then go and find, but just asking the question is helpful, certainly. So there are loads of these templates out there, but I'm actually going to make ours available as part of the email that I send to you, so you can send it out. See how you get on. Sometimes it's helpful to have somebody to work with. I think usually like working with someone in your team can be really, really helpful to kind of hash this out. But if you've got any questions, then let me know. So on to the next slide, which is really about how to utilize this stuff. Because you could create one of these profiles for each of your customers or your target personas, but the real power in any of it is what you then do with the information and where it comes from. So initially, I normally go and ask, in order for us to create the personas for people, I ask to sit down with the sales team. I ask to sit down with people who are dealing face-to-face or most often dealing face-to-face with the customers, not somebody who is maybe lofty on high but doesn't actually talk to them. I really want, because they're the people who know your customers. So that's the first thing to do. It is not perfect, because really, ideally, you'd want to go out and do some qualitative research, get a research company in and do all that, and that would be great, but that's expensive, and it's not necessary in order to get some really powerful insights. It's actually really exciting when you go through this process to see the light bulb moments and the realizations and everything else. It makes things a lot more efficient, and then the marketing plan comes out of this very, very naturally. So the best place to start is honestly just thinking about it and maybe working with other people who work very closely with your customers. The second thing that you can maybe do is, if you think, well, I'm not sure.
Can I just interject on that point? Sorry. One of the exercises that I'll also do is actually review who I've invoiced over a certain period of time. So if any of you are out there that have been in business for sort of 6 months or more, if you've never done it, just sit down and look at who you've invoiced, and you can start to look at them as a business. You can then start your personas. It really is that simple. And it's a really useful and interesting exercise to do as well, because sometimes you're in market sectors that you actually didn't realise that you're becoming specialist in.
Right, okay, and it's probably not the place that everybody would think to look is in their account software.
Yeah.
I do know that you can also put in quite a bit of tracking in with zero, for example, if you've got zero, which can make that information even more powerful as well. So that's really helpful. What you can also do is Google Analytics, for example, on your website. There may be demographic information. You might have activated demographic information, so that could give you extra info. The other thing is that if you come up with some ideas and you actually want them approved, then you could go out to your current clients and past clients with a poll and ask them to let you know. It might be something where if you don't think that they're going to fill out a poll, maybe your current clients, you could do it as part of your account management process, like just as part of an annual review. Also, if you get an opportunity, put an if within that, you can also ask for a testimonial while you're at it. Will be a very efficient use of that time and the exercise. So there apart from that, any other information? Do you think, Julie?
No, that's kind of my little 2 penneth worth in there. Sorry.
Good. No, that's perfect. Thank you. So then the important thing is once you've done your personas, you really need to prioritize them, because otherwise what you've still got is all the people. You've still got that you're targeting everybody with skin. You just managed to put them into groups of people. So then you prioritize them based on who are the I suppose there's easiest to deal with, as in it's easy for them to understand the need. It could be how much budget they have potentially, based on what you know. It could be how easy it is for you to get in front of them. So how much access you have, whether you have good connections. It could also, depending on what's happening within your company, be based on how long the sales cycle is. So if you know, for example, that you really need to get some business in sooner rather than later, but if you're dealing with a larger company, for example, that's going to take quite a bit longer, then you might decide, you know what, no, I'm going to look at the smaller businesses. I'm going to talk to owner-managed companies, for example, because they make a decision and then we move forward. We don't have to go through a procurement process, which can be very long-winded and will really damage my cash flow. So that self-awareness, where you might think, well, I would like to go for the larger companies and tendering processes and bidding and stuff like that, but that'll be the next phase. Right now I'm going to focus on this persona, and I know that this is what they care about and this is where they are. So that's the marketing plan, and that's what's going to come out of it. And the sales plan would match that, I imagine, Julie.
Yeah, it does. It's really interesting how it actually mirrors it, really.
Yeah.
I think knowing your sales cycle is very key to this, and sitting down and looking at that. I deal with a lot of people that are fixated on the larger business because they think that that's where a lot of the quick, big business, lots of business, but actually, as Jessie just said, it's a longer winded process. And a good balance is the short hit business, the medium and the long term, and adjusting your marketing, your personas accordingly.
So prioritize. What we normally do is say put some in your primary column, a secondary, and as much as you need to, but don't put everyone in the first one, because not everybody can be a primary priority. But it's worth developing a negative persona, because inevitably you will probably come across in this somebody who you don't want to do business with. Or there might be people that you will do business, you won't send away, but they're just not your preference, and at least you'll know that. It's helpful for, once you develop your personas, for everybody to know this, including the sales team, because it's easier for them to then recognise, well, hang on a second, these are red flags that actually this person is going to be quite hard to work with, or impossible to work with in the end. So when maybe even after you've landed them as a client, but they can be quite a difficult one, maybe even if it comes down to invoicing and cash flow, whether that could be an issue that you want to talk about. A negative persona is a really, really useful thing to do. What you also might find is if you map your personas or map your current and past customers into the personas that you've developed, you may find that you have a cluster left. And this may be another persona that you maybe just haven't thought about. but it also could be your negative personas, because that's what happened when we went through this exercise, is that actually we found our negative personas when we tried to map all of our current and past customers, and we just found this group of people that we were probably, I think, trying to pretend didn't exist. The other benefit with understanding your negative personas is that you can recognise it and then just gracefully release them back into the wild to deal with somebody who is a better fit for them. And although you might recognise that somebody is your negative persona, the better that you can do that, it's good for your staff morale. You're not going to waste resources on something that's not going to work, but also, even if somebody's not the right persona at that time for you, doesn't mean they won't be in the future, but they could also damage your reputation if they have a negative experience because their expectations are just not aligned with what you do. So
it's okay to say no to business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes that's can create a really big boost, can't it? When knowing who to say no to.
Absolutely.
So that's a really important thing, is to map your current and past customers. It's also very helpful once you come to share these personas with your team, to know to have examples, because then they go, oh yeah, no, I understand who you mean now. And then what do you do with the information? The information automatically makes a marketing plan powerful, easy, intuitive, because you think, right, if I'm focusing on this primary persona, I've got the messaging, I know where they are, we're going to do these campaigns, and then we can move through the list. And it makes it really, really easy to create one. I think from a sales plan, talk me through how it might be different, Julie?
What, with a sales plan with this?
So say, for example, you get the personas together, or understand your target market.
Yeah.
How does that then affect the sales plan?
Yeah, okay, sorry, yeah, I'm with you. So how that positively affects your sales plan is all of your sales activity is around the right types of customers. So let's take telemarketing. So love it or loathe it. I have a large telemarketing team. That what we do is we generate appointments for clients. We're quite clear with the clients on who do they want to target, because it actually makes our telemarketing more effective. If your salespeople are then going into the right types of businesses that match your personas, you then conversion rates on your sales are going to be a lot higher, because you're working with the right types of people. And it also makes the sales process a lot easier, because you've identified their needs, wants, issues and problems. You know that business, you know the types of business, you've possibly used them before, and this is where case studies and things can not only help the marketing journey, but it can also help the sales journey. You understand their industries, you've got an affinity and an empathy with that, which then helps the closing of a sales deal.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think the way that it applies to marketing is, I suppose, very similar. Apart from the marketing plan, it's also a website copy can be very, very easy to do. If you're producing a brochure, the brief is half written. So not only do you have your marketing plan there, so you've decided what you're going to do, but an awful lot of the content is also written, and any briefs become a lot more efficient. So it can kind of feel like sometimes an awful lot of work to do up front, but the benefit in the end is that everything is more efficient and more powerful as well. So how it actually applies, so we've talked a bit about how it applies to marketing, how it applies to sales. How it applies to COVID-19, the current crisis, is really understanding not only, so there's an extra thing to add in there, is how are they affected right now? And if you're not sure, then ask them, because whether that's a conversation, it's showing empathy, it's showing care. Now, the first couple of weeks, some people have been very, very, very busy, and they probably don't want another person. Most people don't want another CEO telling them that they care. But what they may have more time for now is to see how have things been, what can I help in any way, even if it is just holding fire for a while. Is there another version of things? So think about how these people might be affected. For us, it's been very much industry by industry, has been how our clients have been affected, more than the size of the companies. It depends on the industry. And so our personas as it stood was more like to be owner-managed companies, marketing managers, one-man bands, and sales managers. And then they're then subdivided depending on what their attitude to marketing might be or experience, because we found very different experiences. And that's just, this is the thing, is that you can completely copy and paste a persona just based on how they feel about marketing, for example. That's completely valid. At this time, I'm more likely to actually break down things based on break down my personas based on the industry, because there are some industries where they just need some breathing space.
Yeah, very, very good idea. I think I've been talking to a lot of people about pivoting. So you may have had certain industry sectors that you work really well with and you've always worked in those, but taking a step back and pivoting and looking at the industry sectors that are going to be busy. I'll give you an example. One of my clients is a labeling business that's producing labels for the food industry. Now they're rammed. So I stepped back and thought, what type of industries are supplying the food industries at the moment? Same with logistics. So there are a number of different industries, and this exercise that we've just going through is really helpful to help you pivot your business a little bit and look at, you know, where you can get some business from in the areas that are still working.
Right, that's very, very helpful. Okay, so we've just gone past 45 minutes past 11. We're going to move to Q&A, but before we do, number one, Q&A is not recorded. You can start, if you start sharing any questions that you've got in chat. We can also unmute you if you want to raise your hands or whatever. Just think about the questions you've got. View all of the future dates are available on the website at idealmarketingcompany.co.uk/crisis-communications. That's also where you can sign up for email updates and see past episodes. There's a link at the bottom. So that's it.